Welcome back to the shop and to the channel. In last week's video, I made this tool post mount so that I could use lathe tools here on the horizontal mill. So the project for today is to turn this tool holder blank down to an arbor so that I can hold this gear for my universal head. Well, the first thing I need to do is remove this drive dog. I only have one drive dog for this spindle. No idea what happened to the second one. It wasn't on the mill when I got it. One of these days I'm going to have to make a replacement. I want to make sure that the spindle is clear of any kind of dust or debris or anything that might have ended up inside of there before mounting the tool blank in the spindle and then tightening the drawbar. Well, I have a right hand cutting tool mounted in the tool post. I'm going to raise the table, try to find the center as close as I can. It doesn't have to be perfect here, at least not for this, but it will be nice to have it as close as possible. Well, I don't want to make this arbor too small. I think that would be the worst thing here, would be to overshoot it, because then that entails a whole bunch of other complexity to try to fix it. So I do want to try to set some bozo lines here, since I don't have a DRO on this machine, to at least give me an idea of where I need to machine this down to before I break out the precision measuring instruments. Well, I don't have much else to try here to find the center point, so I'm just using this carpenter square. I think this should get me close. I don't know if it's going to be close enough. I guess we'll find out. I'm going to use a punch here to set a center point because I want to set some calipers to the radius of the arbor and inscribe some lines into the dicum. Well, the bore in the gear is an inch in diameter, maybe 100 thousandths over that. So we'll set the radius here for 500 thousandths, half of an inch. Well, then I'll take the scribe here and align it to my caliper so that I have a radius of 500 thousandths. Well, I use one end of the scribe in the center punch. It's why I put that center punch here, and scribe a circle here on the tool blank, and that should be where I want to land, or close to it. Well, as you can see, that was probably a bit of a waste of time. that center point is nowhere near the center of the tool blank, at least not as far as concentricity to the spindle. So I did a pretty poor job of trying to find it. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is face this off and start over. Well, at least with it faced off here, now it left me a visible indicator of where the center is. So I'm going to try to line the punch up on it. Again, it's not going to be precise, but it'll be close enough to give me, some anti-bozo lines. Okay, so now at least I have a reasonable target. I'm going to now machine this tool blank down, leaving the center portion about 150 thousandths or so from my scribed line, and then I'll clean it up from there. Well, this material is pretty hard, so I'm going to try turning on the oil pump here and putting a little oil on the part, and maybe that'll give me a better finish. Well, the oil was doing nothing more than make a mess and making it too smoky for me to see what I was machining. So I think I'm going to forego the oil and just stick with the carbide insert. If I got to change the insert because it burns it up, so be it. But at least I'll be able to better see what I'm doing. Well, this thing is making some nice chips, but they are piling up right in front of the tool post. I guess that's the disadvantage of trying to use your horizontal mill as a lathe. Well, I'm trying to get this thing machined down as close as I can. The tool blank itself does not rest on the front of the spindle. There's actually about a 45 thousandths of a gap, but I can't get my tool close enough for two reasons. Partly because chips have built up on the top of the saddle, on top of the knee rather, and so I can't actually get the saddle back far enough. I can alleviate some of this problem by loosening the tool in the tool holder and expanding the stick out here a little bit so that the tool is a little closer to the work and a little further away from the tool post. And now I can get a little bit closer to the spindle here and should be able to machine off this last little ring here before getting into the tool holder, the tapered part of the tool holder. Alright, I am at total depth here. I don't want to go any further than that out of fear I might end up hitting the face of the spindle. So now I need to come in and clean up the diameter of this arbor. I have had to remind myself that as I'm moving the table, that I'm moving the radius of the cut here, and so I'll be taking twice as much as I move the table off of the diameter, which is different than the way my lathe is set up. My lathe dial on the crossfeed shows me what I'll be taking off the diameter. So here's this a bit different. So I just have to make sure that I remember that as I take these last few cuts. Well, as I get closer here to my final dimension, I'm going to use the gear itself as the real check here. I'll believe the micrometer, but I believe the actual gear more. Well, it's really hard for you to tell because my big fat hand is in the way, but this gear fits on a little bit further on one end than it does on the other, which is leading me to believe that there is a very slight taper in the bore of this gear. So I'm going to have to fix that. It's maybe a couple of tenths, but it's enough to keep it from going on all the way. So I have the gear checked up in the lathe in the 3-jaw. I'm not looking to do super precision machining here, but I've got it marked with X's on the side of the gear that has the narrower bore, and I'm just going to use some emery on a wooden dowel to try to smooth out that taper. We'll give this a quick test fit, and it's going on a little bit further, so I am going in the right direction. I just need to do a little bit more of it. And that's fitting on really nice now. That's a good slip fit, and that's exactly what I was looking for here. I didn't want it to be a press fit, just for ease of assembly and reassembly as I'm going through this process. It doesn't need to be a press fit. Could it have been? Sure, but I think this will be fine. Well, based on some measurements that I took of the universal head and how thick I believe this gear needs to be, this arbor needs to be about 800 thousandths or a little bit less in length. And right now, it's about 200 thousandths too long, and that's taking into consideration this little bit that's sticking out from the spindle face. So I've got a little bit of material I need to take off of the length of this arbor. Well, I think I'm done with the turning operations, at least for now. So I'm going to remove this tool post from the table and get set up for the next operation here. Well, the next thing I need to do is find the center of this arbor. And I thought that was going to be pretty difficult. And then I remembered I have this spin indexing tool that's generally used for grinding and occasionally on the milling machine. And I think it's going to come in really handy for this. Well, I've got a 3/8 5C collet that I will mount into the spin indexer, and inside the collet I'm going to use my Blake coaxial indicator. And this should make it pretty easy for me to line up the Arbor center with the center of the spin indexer. So now all I need to do is hit and spin the spin indexer and adjust the table and the knee height until I get that needle to stop jumping around. And once it's stable, then I can be pretty rest assured that the spin indexer is centered up on that arbor in the spindle. Well, that's within a thousandths, and I think that's more than accurate enough. Well, the reason why I want to find the center of the arbor is I'm going to drill and tap the center of it for a 1/4 28 screw. I happen to have a Jacob's chuck that's mounted to a 1/2 inch shaft, so we'll put a 1/2 inch 5C collet in the spin indexer and mount the drill chuck. I have the spin indexer locked so that the collet, or the drill chuck in this case, won't spin, and I'll just bring the saddle in and go ahead and drill this hole. Using a little more anchor loop here on this spiral flute tap here. I prefer to use these for blind holes. We'll go ahead and tap this down to the bottom of the hole. Well, I think that wraps up the machining on the tool holder, the tool blank. So I can go ahead and loosen the drawbar and tap this out of the spindle. We'll take it over to the bench and get a closer look. Well, I think that's all of the machining I need to do for the arbor. Still a lot to do. I need to machine the drive dogs that'll mount to the bottom of this thing. I also need to reduce the thickness of the gear. I need to take probably about 200 thousandths off of the width. I also need to machine a 3-inch diameter 1/4 inch plate that will get screwed to the front of the gear. So still quite a lot to do, and I hope you'll stick around to watch how this turns out and see this universal head operating for the first time in who knows how many decades. If you like the video, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. I really wish you would hit that notification bell so you'll know when I publish a new video. And thanks for all those that are supporting this channel on Patreon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.